Tonight on the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror, after witnessing a murder, a musician teams up with a reporter in a desperate race to figure out the identity of the killer, all the while the killer is tying up loose ends. Tonight's movie, Deep Red.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror! The Year of Infamy! Infamy! Oh my goodness, infamy, yes! Oh! Tonight, I have a special treat for all of you out there in Halloween land. And that is, I am going to review one of Dario Argento's masterpieces. I mean, it is amazing that this director has more than one, right? You know, usually you only have one masterpiece, and that's your legacy, but man, this guy's got multiple. And it just so happens to be probably the greatest Giallo ever made. You know, there's a debate, but still I think it's pretty damn good. And that movie is the one and only Deep Red Profondo Rosso. And I have this great little Arrow video release of it on Blu-ray that comes with a wonderful poster, a nice booklet, and of course the movie itself, along with the reversible artwork. Though I do really like the artwork on this this cover. It is really good. Anyways, now the task of trying to get it all back in there, nice and neatly. It's always the book that has the biggest problem. Anyways, so what makes this release special is that it has the international version of the movie not shown or released in America. A movie that I previously watched was the American version, so this actually has scenes that were cut out of the American version, the US version, and so these have those. However, it's a little bit awkward to watch because when, of course, they made the American version, they cut the scenes that they didn't want, and they dubbed the voices with the cut that they made. So there is no English dub for all the stuff that was cut out. So it goes from English dub to Italian language with subtitles, and it's a little jarring. What I would suggest, if you don't mind subtitles, though there's something to be said that part of Giallo's charm, in my opinion, is the dub work, but to have a more smooth time watching that version, I would suggest watching it in the Italian language with English subtitles, just so that you don't have the kind of, you know, jarring, because it does kind of take away a little bit from the experience, because you're like, you know, you're in the flow and then things get weird. However, it does give you the ability to know what scenes were cut out, and gives you a much better context when you're comparing it to the version that was released theatrically in the US. So, you know, and that was really helpful for me, especially for this review. Anyways, so let's get into, after all of that, let's get into Deep Red. What is Deep Red about? Well, it starts out with a murder. Of course, they always seem to start out with a murder, right? Anyways, it's Christmas time. It's a nice holiday scene, and someone gets brutally killed, and the murder weapon dropped on the floor at the foot of a child. Fast forward, we meet our protagonist. He is an Englishman who is in Italy, doing music work. He is a musician and composer, and he is rehearsing with fellow bandmates, and not too far away in a wonderful opera hall, there is a symposium going on, and there are a few speakers, and they are talking about psychic phenomenon, and their special guest is, I believe it was a Hungarian woman, who was starting to wow the crowds with her ability to sense their thoughts and read their minds in a way. However, one person in the crowd has murderous thoughts, and she senses them and feels them and is disturbed by them. And, she says, "You have killed and you will kill again." Yeah, prophetic words to be sure. Anyways, this individual did not take kindly to having her, the psychic, sense their murderous intent. So they decide to go and murk the wonderful yet tragic psychic. You would think the psychic would be able to see it coming, right? Anyways, I'm just saying. Anyways, so the murderer hunts her down in her apartment and kills her, and while doing so, not far away, in kind of like a sort of a town square-ish type of thing. Anyways, our protagonist is talking with his friend, who's another musician, and they hear the screams, and he goes and looks and sees in the window the psychic being brutally murdered, and so he rushes to help out, and of course he is too late, and the poor psychic, alas, is already dead. And of course, the police come, and he tells them everything he knows, especially the last part where he sees a kind of trench coat-clad person walking away from the scene. And, it's quite interesting also that he senses something is wrong with the room, that something's different. I don't know if it's one of the pictures or something, but something is off. It's not quite what it was when he first arrived. But, anyways, he, of course, is now kind of a suspect since, he was the one there standing over the body or holding the body. And so he decides to try to figure out who the killer is. And he ends up kind of reluctantly teaming up with a female reporter. And they try to figure out what is going on, who is the killer. And all the while, the killer is doing their best to try to stop them from figuring out who they are, and basically killing anyone that stands in the killer's way from, basically figuring out who they are, or if they already have, not allowing them to tell other people who they are. So we have this kind of cat and mouse game between the killer and the investigators, and our protagonists are inevitably led to a mysterious house that has a secret within it. What is that secret? And what does it have to do with the killings and the killer in general? Well, you gotta find out by watching the movie, but let's just say they have to put the pieces together before they themselves end up murked by the evil, trench coat clad killer. So there we go. There's a nice little synopsis there. So let's get to those scores, shall we? Violence and gore, I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's not too overly bloody, and not too overly gory overall, but there are some brutal scenes that push up that score to 4 out of 5. There is a brutal scene toward the end. There's also a scene that's kind of like bite curb, but not quite. More like bite whatever the I want to say furnace, but no, fireplace, mantle, whatever thing. Anyways, just, yeah, there's some truly brutal things going on in this movie, even if it's not overly bloody or overly gory, except maybe that last kill, because it is, well, not the last kill, but that one kill toward the end is kind of spectacular, and maybe a little overboard, but, you know, we love that. So, 4 out of 5. Shock Value, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. There are some actual nice little jumps in this movie that come from its overall creepy atmosphere, and also the shocks of the reveal. And there is also a scene with this doll, and it is pretty effective. Anyways, so I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5. You don't really get that too much with Giallo, the Giallo genre, but you know, it hits it pretty well. 3 out of 5. Plot, I am going to give this a 4 out of 5, which is unheard of in the Giallo genre, because I watched this with a friend of mine, and my friend says this is not a Giallo because it makes sense. The plot makes sense. And the thing is, yes, the plot actually makes sense. We have a killer that isn't just like a footnote or a passing character, and it all gets tied together pretty well. The big problems with the plot is the flow of the movie, and that's probably because of the version that I'm watching. Definitely the US version is more concise and is shorter, and there is a lot of kind of superfluous stuff that is cut out. The beginning of the movie in the original version is you know, introducing the musician and having the rehearsal, while that was completely cut out in the US version, and it starts with the curtain opening going into the opera hall, which I think is actually a better opening because it's more artistic. However, it does establish the fact of our main character being a musician. The old adage, show, don't tell. And so, and there is like a lot of kind of superfluous dialogue that's been cut in the American version. And a lot of the comedy in this movie, yes, there is actually comedy. Comical moments have been cut out of this movie. The thing with the reporter's car and a lot of their interactions. The problem is, when you cut that out, the sort of love story that you watch in the US version seems super forced and kind of out of nowhere. And watching the international version actually fills that in a lot better. But because of it, the tone, or not the tone is somewhat uneven. The flow is a little uneven, and it's a little stunted, and so that way I can't give it a perfect 5 out of 5, but it's pretty dang good. 4 out of 5. Moving on to acting, I am also giving this a 4 out of 5. Look, the psychic, yeah, her overacting during the psychic scenes was pretty much the weakest part in this movie. Everything else I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed our main character, the reporter, the killer, his friend. Everyone in this movie does a pretty decent job, and there's no real like distractions in this movie. The only thing really that is a distraction, but it's on purpose, is that everything's set up like kind of like a painting, where you'll have a lot of people in the background just still, not moving. And I think, you know, Dario Argento kind of wanted that sort of that sort of effect, because painting is kind of important to the plot in a certain sense, especially from the beginning. And when you rewatch it, looking at things, knowing what you know, you see it and you're like, wow, it was there the whole time. And it's brilliant because of that. But also because it kind of creates a sort of isolation feel too, because this is, you know, this is supposed to be busy Italian city, and in a lot of important scenes, there's not a whole lot of people around, and the people around aren't really part of what's going on. They're just they're in the background. They are part of the scenery. In fact, the beginning scenes when the protagonist is talking to his friend, and they're outside, and there's sort of like a diner of sorts, and it just reminds me so much of the classic artwork that called I think it was called Nighthawks. It is classic, and it just seems like, you know, one of those things like where every frame is a painting of sorts, and I think it really hits home the way he did this, and it's pretty spectacular. I don't know why I'm saying this during the acting, but I guess that's part of the acting, is having the extras or the people in the background do a job of being like completely still, or just have someone, like there's a scene where they're like I don't know, like they're in like the street, and there's this person, and all they're doing is the same thing, you know, looking around over and over again, and it's strange because it sticks out, but yet it also works well in this movie. So anyway, solid 4 out of 5 for acting. Moving on to Nudity. Nudity, it's a 0.5 out of 5. I'm trying to stay away from the 0.25s and the 0.75s because it just makes things awkward. However, really there's not much. There is a brief scene when the psychic is getting killed, and when she's getting killed, like her nightgown comes open and you see a booby. There it is. That's all it is. 0.5 out of 5. Moving on to enjoyment factor. It is, of course, a 5 out of 5. It is a phenomenal movie that is engrossing, and it works on so many levels. The plot is, you know, surprisingly straightforward, even though there are twists and turns in it. It never feels like it's overly convoluted, and it makes sense at the end and doesn't feel cheap or cheaty like some Giallos are. And it's definitely up there with the highest of highs of movies that I love. It is great. Watch over and over again. Has spectacular kills, great tension, great atmosphere. Has actual levity and comical moments in there that I didn't actually know existed because of the U.S. version. And honestly, I think the original is superior in most ways, though the U.S. version definitely is more concise, more strict horror Giallo. But I still think that watching the official international Italian version is the best way to go about it. So anyways, 5 out of 5. Highly recommend. Watch. Overall impression is a 4.5 out of 5. It is almost perfect, except for some of the issues with the plot, and some of the issues with the overacting at the beginning with the psychic lady. Otherwise, is magnificent. It is an achievement. It is a monument. It is one of the greatest Giallos ever made. One of the greatest horror movies ever made. Highly recommend that you go watch it. Pick up the Arrow release. It is really good. They're going to probably eventually come up with a 4K one, and I'm going to have to shell out money for that, and I will be happy to, because, anyways, just really cool, really awesome stuff. And that averages out to a super strong 3.6 out of 5. When you're hitting those scores, it's either you're a great movie or you have a lot of gore and nudity in it. It deserves everything. It is a great movie. Excellent, spectacular. So there you have it. Dario Argento's Deep Red, Profondo Rosso. I don't know. Anyway, so there you have it. Profondo Rosso, Deep Red. Have you seen it? Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I should remind myself to say that at the beginning of the videos every time, because apparently that's what I'm supposed to do, even though none of this actually matters in the end. Anyway, so there you have it. That is all for tonight's episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror. And remember, everyone, to stay scary, internet. And also, you know, it's sad to say, back then it was probably a bad idea to try to help someone who's getting murdered because of the way that forensics were back then. Modern day forensics, much more helpful to you, that you can go and try to help someone who's getting murdered because they're going to be able to figure out that you came in afterwards, and that, you know, as long as you don't do stupid things like touch everything after you find the person. It's like, no, immediately call the police, say, someone's getting murdered, I'm heading over there now, establish that, and, then you'll be able to not be the prime suspect, or at least be eliminated as a suspect early on in the investigation. Of course, if you're the murderer, then don't do any of that stuff. But I'd advise not to murder. That would be my thing. Kids, don't murder. It's bad. All right. God, I think this is a long one.